Hello everyone, in today's video we are going to discuss the third day of the Tata Steel Chess Rapid India 2022. Total 10 players are playing the tournament and after the 6 rounds have been completed successfully. Today was the day 2. On the first position we have Nihal Sarin with 4.5 points out of 6. On the second place we have Arjun Erigaisi. On the third, Shakhriyar Mamedyarov. From the fourth and the seventh place, all the players are having the same points, 3 points each. And on the 8th place, we have Wesley Sir. On the 9th place, we have Nodirbek Abdusattorov. On the 10th place, we have Setu Raman. So these are the standings after the six rounds. Today were the 3 rounds completed. And today we are going to discuss the 3 interesting games played from the 4th, 5th and 6th round. And the games are going to be very interesting and we are going to have a lot of fun. So let's check it out. So in the 4th round, we have the game between Hikaru Nakamura versus Shakhriyar Mamedyarov. Hikaru Nakamura is playing with the white pieces and he opens the game with one knight f3. Knight to f6 and all those who don't know, after 3 rounds, Shakhriyar Mamedyarov is currently leading the tournament with 3 out of 3. So he's in good form and Hikaru Nakamura scored, I believe, 0.5 out of 3. So he's having a pretty bad day at the first day. But now it's a new day, new start. We have knight f3, knight f6 on the board. e3 by Nakamura, g6, and now we have b3. So basically challenging the bishop on g7 by playing b3, putting the bishop to b2. Bishop to g7, bishop to b2, c5, c4. Short castle, bishop to e2. So basically we have the ready system on the board. b6, short castle, and here bishop to b7. Queen c2. And first of all, after bishop b7, if I need to judge this position, I would say black perhaps have equalized the position. The reason is quite simple. The bishop on g7 is comparatively much better than the bishop on e2. So I would say the position is roughly equal, but yeah. Queen to c2 was played in the game, and here we have knight to c6, rook to d1. Not going for the move d4, though I think d4 can be a fine move in this position. You are opening up your position, and your all pieces are developed, so it's a fine idea. But rook to d1. So basically Nakamura wants to keep the option open whether he wants to push the pawn to d4 or whether he wants to keep the pawn on d2 or does he want to play the move d3. So many ideas in the air. We have d5 by Mamedyarov, cd, and now knight to b4 by black, hitting the queen and capturing the pawn. Queen goes back to c1, queen into d5. And here we have knight to c3, developing the knight with the tempo of hitting the queen on d5. Queen goes to f5, d4 by Nakamura, rook to c8. And here I would definitely favor black in this position. The reason is quite simple. Black pieces are all developed. And the rook on c8 is first of all looking on the queen on c1. So I would already say that it's comparatively much... it's uncomfortable to play from the white side in this particular position in the lower level or in even the club level players. So after rook c8, black is already having a slight better position, I would say. D to c5 was playing the game. Bishop into f3 by black, giving up the bishop for the knight. The idea for giving up the bishop for the knight was he wants to put the knight to d3. Another move could have been to play queen into c5, and I believe after queen into c5, black is still having a slight edge in this position because like moving the knight is like you do not have a good flair for moving the knight. You can play knight to a4 in this position, but here queen to h5 and the rook is hitting the queen. So many things are happening in this position. I would already consider black is having a small advantage. But bishop into f3 was played in the game, bishop into f3, and now knight to d3, hitting the queen and the bishop. And here we have e4 in the game. Like the queen is attacked. So if you try to move the queen in this position by playing queen to b1, you have simply knight into b2, and after queen into b2, I think Nakamura didn't like that the bishop on g7 is looking at the queen on b2. So it is looking much uncomfortable because after rook into c5, there can be a huge amount of pressure on the knight on c3. So he went for the move e4, which also makes a logical move or a logic sense. And the idea here is we're basically removing the control from the queen from the knight. And currently the queen is attacked and also the knight. So if you try to protect the knight by playing queen to d7, the only way to defend the knight, now queen to b1, and you lose the knight eventually after bishop to e2. If black tries to play rook d8, bishop e2, and we win the knight. So yeah. So after e4, there is the only move that black can play to keep the game equal. So what is the move? Feel free to pause the video and try to find the only move for black to keep the position equal. Okay, so all those who have came up with the move knight into c1, this is not keeping the position equal because of the pawn takes. The knight is basically simply trapped on c1, and white is going to be soon a piece up. But the move is queen into f3, giving up the queen for the bishop. And the idea here is after g into f3, which is the fourth move, now knight into c1, rook into c1, rook into c5, and the position is roughly equal. Both the sides are having equal material, and it's a fine position. But I think white would be having a slight edge, perhaps because both the rooks are on this open files, which give white a slight edge. At the place of capturing the pawn on c4, the better move was a much better move, a slightly better move was to play bishop to h6, first hitting the rook, and after rook b1, you can now capture the rook. You can now capture the pawn, and the position is equal. And if you try to play rook c2 after rook takes, you cannot move the knight because the rook is hanging, so black should be fine. But okay, directly capturing the pawn was also a fine move. Bishop to h3 was played, but this move, bishop h3 now, rook check, king f1, this basically forced black to play rook to e8, defending the pawn on e7. And now rook to c2, rook to h5, going for the pawn on h2, king g1, bishop to f8, knight to e2, rook to a5, bishop to b4, rook to b5, bishop to d2, rook to c5, asking for a rook trade. Nakamura happily traded the rooks because now the a pawn and the c pawns are isolated, so it's much easier to play. Bishop to c3, going for the knight, rook to c8, and here we have pawn push. If white goes for capturing the knight in this position is still fine. And usually such endgames are draw. But yeah, currently this position is drawish, but I believe the knight is having a nice outpost on e5. And perhaps rook to d7. This position perhaps can still be playable, but it's more likely draw. So Nakamura wanted to keep the position, keep the pieces on the board. So he went for the move e5, hitting the knight, and now knight went to the e8. Rook to d7. He came in with the rook, hitting the pawn on e7. Now e6. Rook e7. Rook to c6. Rook e8. Hitting the knight. The knight goes to g7. Knight to f4. e6 because the knight is having a nice move on d5. So you have to stop it by playing e6. And now knight to g2. Knight f5, we have a knight trade, king g7, king f2, c4 trying to remove the isolated pawn, pawn push. You cannot capture because after rook takes, the position would be slightly better for black now because the rook is much more activated than the rook on a8. Pawn push, a nice move by Nakamura, bishop to e7, king to e2, h5, rook b8, pawn push. So a couple of moves were played, so now it's a competition. Whether these pawns are going to win or whether these pawns are going to win. I would say these pawns are going to simply win because basically the pawn on e5 is handling both the pawns on e6 and f7. So basically the f pawn and the h pawn is capable on stopping the pawn on g and the h pawn. And here after rook b6, the pawn is simply attacked. If you try to defend it, now rook c6 and you lose the c4 pawn. So eventually rook to d7 was played by Mamedyarov. And here he was forced to give up the pawn, and after a couple of moves like this, on the move number 47, he decides to resign the game. The reason is quite simple: black is having no real play in the position. White is going to simply play rook c6, chop off the pawn on a6, and going to push both the pawns and win the game. Even if you try to defend it, soon white king is going to come, and it would be a long game, but white is going to win the game because black is having no counterplay in this position. So hence Nakamura won the game against Shakhriyar Mamedyarov in the 4th game. So now it's time for us to look at the 5th game, the game between Gukesh versus Nodirbek. Abdusattorov. Both the players are extremely strong players having a good rivalry between each other. So it's going to be interesting to check out that game. So let's check it out. So discussing the 5th game, Gukesh is playing against Nodirbek Abdusattorov, and Gukesh starts out the game 1 knight f3, knight to f6, g3, c5, bishop to g2, knight to c6, c4. We have again the red on the board. d5 by black, opening up the position. cd, knight into d5, short castle by white, and here you have e5. It looks like a reverse. What should I say? The reverse Sicilian, and it looks like the white is playing the Sicilian dragon with the white pieces, and whereas black is playing the standard variation against the French, standard variation against the Sicilian. So yeah, e5 is playing the game. Knight to c3 by Gukesh, knight to c7. So all those who don't know, Nodirbek is a very fighting, aggressive player in the very aggressive player. Like you can already sense it by looking at the move knight to c7. If he was very like positional type of play, he could have simply developed his pieces to bishop e7 or bishop e6. But he likes to keep the pieces on the board, likes to play aggressively, likes to maneuver the pieces. He puts the knight to c7. a3, f6 in the position. I don't know the idea, but perhaps he want to protect the pawn on e5. He could even go for playing a move like bishop e7. But okay, f6, e3 in the game, bishop e7, pawn push, cd, ed, e to d4, knight to e2 hitting the pawn, knight to e6 protecting the pawn on d4, and here b4 by Gukesh, opening up on the queen side, and he wants to put the bishop on b2, putting pressure on the pawn on d4. So we have simple castle by Nodirbek. Bishop to b2. Now there is a 4 attack and 3 defenders, so the pawn is currently hanging. The only way to defend the pawn is to push the pawn. Knight to c1. Now the pawn is again hanging. The only way to defend the pawn is to... You can't actually defend the pawn. So the pawn is basically lost, and Nodirbek is going to be a pawn down. So he decides to play knight to c7. Knight into d3. Bishop to f5. Queen b3 check. Nice move in the position, and I would say the most critical move, because after that, after king h8, we simply have knight to f5, knight to f4, and white idea in this position is to simply play rook d1, hitting the queen. So black played queen to e8, and if you just look at this position, white is having a harmonious position. Every piece is simply open up, whereas black pieces are all blocked in their own area. The queen is blocked in, the knight is blocked in. The white bishop is open, but white is having too many open files to put his rooks on. So he first went for the move b5, hitting the knight, and the knight went back to the d8 again. So, like, black pieces are too tied up. So like it's already looking really bad position for Nodirbek. If he goes for playing a move like knight f5 after queen c3, one knight is going to be dead. That's the reason you cannot play knight to a5, and you went for the move knight d8. But now comes knight h4, hitting the bishop. Bishop went to e6, hitting the queen. We have trade, rook e1. And the position is too good for white. Too good, I would say. Like, the pawn is hanging on b7. The knight is hanging currently. So queen to f7 was playing the game. And now rook into e6, giving up the exchange. And Gukesh could have simply got a good position by capturing the pawn on b7, and after rook b8, bishop c6, white is a pawn up, having a healthy position, and he can play as long as he wants. But he went for capturing the knight in this position, queen into e6, queen into knight into, and now rook to e1, getting a minor piece, and eventually we have 2 minor pieces against each other. Okay, and all those who are thinking, what happens if black tries to capture with the knight? Here we simply have bishop to d5, and we lose the knight. So queen into knight into rook takes, and we have this position where white is definitely better. Having a 2 minor piece against a rook is always better. Rook to e8, we have a rook trade, king to f1, stopping this rook coming into e1 or e2. Rook to d8, king to e2, rook check, king to d3, pawn push, bishop. And here white decides to give up the pawn, because if you want to make any progress, you need to leave your king from the protecting this pawn to f2. So we have king d3, pawn push, takes knight to f3. This is still winning for white. White is at least better in this position. We have 4 pawns, we have 5 pawns. So basically we have this against this. Okay. Material wise the position is equal, but position wise white is better because white is having the bishop there. On push on g4, king to f7, a3. The a4, the idea is to perhaps put the bishop to a3. Pawn push, bishop check, knight comes, bishop goes, check, 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 check. So a huge amount of checks coming in, and you can't go here because the bishop check and black loses the rook. And if you go back, knight e6 check. So too many checks are coming in. So Nodirbek decides to trade off the bishop. But now it's even more easier for Gukesh to win the game. Now the A and the C pawn are simply isolated pawns, and as I say, the isolated pawns are the weak pawns. Rook to f8, pushing the pawn to 8, and Gukesh simply blocked the king's side and check, grab the C pawn, check, and now he decides to push his queen side pawns, and he could have captured the pawn if he's still winning, but you simply push the pawn because the promotion square is of the bishop is protecting the promotion square of the pawn. So rook, the only way to defend the a7. Now bishop, check, push, push. And if you try to capture, white will make a queen. So rook came, push, and after takes. Nodirbek decides to resign the game, and we have the winner of the 5th game. Gukesh won. I would say Gukesh simply crushed Nodirbek in this particular game, because he basically, if I just give you a quick recap, the opening went well for both the players, and when Gukesh decides to play d4 and he opened up the position, first of all, black simply got an isolated pawn, which is hard to play. He tried to defend it, but now this quadruple attacks. He tried to push the pawn, now the double attack. He lost a pawn, and eventually now this queen to b3 check. Having this open files, taking the knight to d8 is completely bad position for black, I would say. And simply, I would say Gukesh didn't give any chance to Nodirbek to play. So yeah, so we have the winner Gukesh, and now we are going to discuss the 6th round between Arjun Erigaisi versus against Shakhriyar Mamedyarov. The game is going to be very interesting and very epic, so let's check it out. So discussing the 6th round, Arjun Erigaisi versus Shakhriyar Mamedyarov. It's going to be a very interesting round, so let's check it out. Arjun's with the white pieces starts out with 1 e4, and Mamedyarov replied with e5. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop to c4. We have the Italian on the board. Knight f6, and now we have d3. Bishop to c5, c3. The standard way of playing. d6, short castle, a6, a4. White trying to expand on the queen side. Bishop to a7, bishop to g5, h6, bishop h4, and now the real fun is going to begin. g5 black, hitting the bishop, and first of all capturing in this position doesn't make any sense because the king is not on g8. If the king would have been on g8, you can still think for capturing the pawn on g5, but still nothing happens usually. So bishop to g3, a 4th move. Queen to e7, knight to d2, rook to g8 now. And after playing rook g8, we are already sure, even Arjun is sure that Mamedyarov is going to attack on the king's side, and he's preparing to castle on the long side, I guess. So b4, a very natural approach, trying to expand on the queen side, as it looks that the only way for Mamedyarov to castle is the queen side. And here white went for the move b5, hitting the knight, and we have knight to d8. If black could have gone for capturing the pawn, but after a b5, the knight is attacked, and And if you try to move the knight, here we simply have rook a2, queen a1, and black is going to lose a piece. So black was forced to go back with the knight, and here we have d4. White could have captured the pawn like this, but after bishop into f2, this, the material-wise the position is equal, but the a pawn is a pass pawn, which gives white a good advantage. But Arjun went for a different approach. As the king is in the center, he went for the move d4, opening up the position. a5, Mamedyarov tries to block on the queen side, and here we have d into e5. D into e5, bishop into e5, capturing the pawn. And if you can't capture really because after knight into e5 takes, this position is good for white, and white is winning because white pieces are too well developed compared to the black pieces. As you can see, no coordination. So yeah, after bishop into e5, we have knight to e6, bishop into e6, pawn into e6, bishop to d4. The best move was to play knight to c4, perhaps to the bishop is well placed on d5, so you can develop your knight over here. Perhaps the idea could be to play b6, and like a sample line could be like after knight into e4, there could be queen e2 hitting the knight. Knight goes back, takes b6, and white could be better, but I can say that I'm definitely sure the position, both the players are extremely in time pressure, so Arjun already knew that he was better, so he tried to simplify the position, which is very practical. Bishop into pawn into long castle by Mamedyarov, a nice move, I would say. Queen to c2, bishop into knight into, pawn push, knight to d2, rook takes, and suddenly it looks like perhaps Mamedyarov is gaining some counterplay. So now we have rook to c1, b6, knight to c4, queen to c5, pawn push, knight to e4, and knights. It really looks like perhaps black is having something, but nothing is happening actually. White is still better. We have queen b3, pawn push. And a fine move would be to play knight to d6 check, the best move actually. And after rook into d6, rook into g to f2, king h1, knight into c5, queen f3, rook to d5, queen into f2. And this is the best that white can achieve. Okay, but what happened in the game is, after pawn push, Arjun decides to capture the pawn. And here's my question. You are in Mamedyarov's shoes. What are you going to play in this position, which will give you a completely winning position? So what are you going to play? Okay, so all those who have came up with this move. Rook into c4, this is not working. This is the move that played in the game, but the winning move was to play rook d1 check. And like if you try to capture the rook, queen into f2 check. Let's say a move like king h1, knight into g3 check, king h2, and now comes the move knight f1 check. And this is winning. You take, and it's a mate. And if you try to capture the rook with the queen, and if I show you the same line here after this, now knight f1 is not coming because of queen into f1. The queen is protecting the pawn, but now knight e2, and there is a mate hanging over here, and even queen to h4 is a mate because the knight on e2 covers the g3 and the g1 square. So it could have been a completely winning position. And if king h2, we simply have this, and mate. Okay. So after rook to d1, the best is to move the king. And now comes queen into f2. And this position is still winning. If you try to capture this, we have rook into g3. It's a mate. The queen is hanging. So everything is collapsing apart. But luckily or unluckily, I don't know. But Shakhriyar Mamedyarov missed it. And he went for the move. Rook into c4. Queen into c4. And now he took the pawn on f2. But this particular variation is not working in this particular line because of king h1, knight takes king to h2, and here comes queen to f7. Because if you try to give a check, now comes queen into f1 and it defends the g2 pawn. And if you try to play knight to e2, threatening a mate like this or this, now black is the one who is getting mated in one. So that's the reason Mamedyarov was forced to go back. But after king g1 pawn push, a couple of moves were played. white is simply an exchanger. This was, and here, after rook into c5, on the move number 36, Mamedyarov decides to design the game. The reason is quite simple. If you try to capture the rook, takes. And if you try to move the king, let's say over here, now we have queen f8 check, and it's basically, I would say, a check, king b8, queen f8 check, rook to d7 check. And if you try to go over here, we have d6 check, and it takes, queen b8 check, and soon it's going to be mated. Queen king c6, rook d6 check, and so this is the whole variation. So this is the game, like this is the most epic game out of 6 rounds, because they were all ups and downs, and this was the critical moment where I think if Mamedyarov would have saw it, he could have won the game. If he would have saw this move, rook d1, this move would have been an awesome move. But yeah, he wasn't able to find the move, and eventually lost the game, and Nacho won the game. So these were the 3 interesting games from the 4th, 5th, and the 6th round. I hope that you guys have liked the video and the analysis of the game. If you did, then make sure to like the video, share this video with your friends, and make sure to subscribe to our channel if you are new to our channel, because we are going to come up with these interesting videos like this. This was the day 2 of the Tata Steel Chess Rapid India. I'm going to come up with these interesting videos like this because many more days are remaining. So it's going to be fun. I'm going to see you soon. Till then, stay tuned and keep watching OneShot Chess.